Thank you so much for the very kind introduction. Thank you, Major General Ashok Kumar, TG St. George, Macass, and the administrators today for organizing this two-day seminar. I think it's a wonderful topic, India's maritime culture, continuity and change. I think we are already running a little late, but I'll just cover a few things quickly and then hand over to the eminent panelists. So since the morning, I think we've gone through very well. We saw maritime heritage first. Then we looked at maritime trade, diaspora, and soft power. Then we looked at sea power and security, an element of the Navy started building up. And now we are on something called blue economy. It's a deeply complex study. It's not something that I was really aware of very well, being a man in uniform and being involved with the application of force insofar as this element of maritime power is concerned. So I myself will learn a lot during this session, and I look forward to the views of the panelists. So quickly, firstly, we will have Dr. Chime Yudon from National Maritime Foundation. She will speak to us on the blue water economy, and frankly, she's been my guru for the last 1 week, trying to understand blue economy and the details in it. So very grateful to you, Chime, for that. She told me don't mention that, but I said I have to. Intellectual property rights. She's the one behind a lot of interesting insights I got. Then we will have marine life and its national connect, that is being spoken by Dr. Prateep Chattopadhyay from Kalyan University. That will again be very, very interesting. We then move on to Indian outreach through Maritime Connect, emerging contours of Indian diaspora, and the diaspora of India is truly a huge contributor to national growth, and that will be covered by Dr. Debashish Nandi from Qazi Nazrul University. We then go on to be with Commodore Ajay Agarwal, who gave us a brief in the morning on India's maritime history, and he will be speaking on the history of shipbuilding, and the more we know about it, the better it is for us, because I think there's wealth of information in it which we are not too well aware of. And finally, nothing can be completed without the law and understanding the law, so-called legal finish, for which we have Dr. Ashok Vajje from MNLU, and he's going to be speaking to us on water laws and international governance. So, while during the day, I was noting down a few things, and, we realized that this vision, or is it a policy, one can discuss, Sagar, security and growth for all in the region. And the point to note is, you see the word growth coming in. And if you see the bottom of this slide, I'm going to be speaking just for about 5 to 10 minutes because we have to catch up on time, is the oceans as powerhouse for economic growth. So St. George told me to cover this part. And you see the word growth has come in a number of times today since the morning. But you would find another word called security coming up. And security, as Dr. Parelkar very nicely said, is not just Navy. It is the whole thing. It's ports, it's fishing, it's the maritime infrastructure, everything which we will deal into in the blue economy. So I think security and growth go together. If the pirates today have not done inimical action in the Western Indian Ocean, I think, to my mind, this is my opinion, it is to the credit of the Indian Navy that the pirates, so-called, have decided that, you see an Indian naval ship, and I was Chief Staff Officer Operations Western Naval Command. I knew for one that they would funk when it was an Indian naval ship coming around, because we would simply go in and make sure that the seas were safe. And that's the kind of power, that's the kind of security you need to put across. I think I'll move on to my presentation. I just click the arrows and it will go through. All right. So I'm going to be giving a quick brief on oceans as powerhouse for economic growth, and I would basically be telling this audience, which already knows it, I think all of you are well aware, about the importance of oceans, something about a maritime geography, a little bit about the history. The Government of India efforts towards blue economy would be covered as we go along in this session, and then a quick conclusion. So, this is all very well known, 70% of the Earth's surface, and a very, very critical point, but I think there's a very limited audience, but those, the men in olive greens, the oceans are absolutely fundamental in regulating climate. If we live and breathe today, it is because of the oceans. So the acidification of the ocean being a carbon sink, is all extremely important. We are well aware of how important the oceans are in terms of maritime trade, and how we must view the sea as a medium of connecting people rather than taking them apart. It's a reservoir of food and minerals, and it is sad that in Indian waters, it is said that beyond a certain region, far away into the sea, deep sea fishing, the fish in our area die of old age. They are not even caught. 5% of the global GDP, as the figures show, are there. And you remember Mr. Parulkar talking about the blue economy in terms of 26 trillion in terms of its net worth in the Indo-Pacific region, and the employment over 600 million individuals. All this is well known, but I think this is one of the main points of my presentation, is that Professor Jeffrey Till, who's well known in matters of maritime strategy, why is sea important? Forget about growth, not just the growth part of it, but why is sea so important for all of us, which we generally don't realize because many of us don't go to sea. Firstly, as you go from the bottom left, it's a means of transportation. Nothing can match the volume and cost per nautical mile or kilometer travel that the sea brings. It's the cheapest and the most voluminous amount of goods that can be carried. Then information. It's well known that cloud is beneath the sea. The cloud is beneath the sea in the sense all the data cables are actually lying on the seabed. If I'm not wrong, 95% or 99% of data communication passes through submarine cables. It's a means of dominion. And that's how India was discovered. That's how the US was discovered. And we continue to build on it by developing Andaman and Nicobar, Lakshadweep and Minicoy Islands. It's a means of resources. And much of the seminar is talking about that, and today especially in terms of seabed mining, etc. But I felt during my thesis, etc., as you grow old, that there is another attribute to what Professor Till added, and that is the most important, that it is a means of sustenance of life. Seas have turned into garbage. I went to a naval station recently. I was sitting, listening to the wonderful waves of the ocean crashing. They never seem as noise, firstly. You just, even if it is loud, you don't feel it as noise. It feels like music. But when the waters receded, there was trash around. So I said, hey, how come a naval station is so bad? He said, no, sir, this is all coming in with the tide, because everything is dumped into the sea. The sea has become the dumping ground. And that is where the legislation has to catch up, and that is another aspect of security. In this slide, quickly, basically, we've covered the attributes of the sea, the 4 attributes, and the important one that I feel, sustenance of seas. And here you will see a points about related to rare earth metals. You must have heard a lot about rare earth metals and how they're important. Hopefully, it might get covered today. A gateway for information exchange, more and more so as we are relying more and more on internet. And obviously, maritime domain and dominion and the dependence of nations on its prosperity. Maritime geography, quick points. You can all read it on the screen. There is nothing so new or novel about it, but these are figures that all of us should remember whenever we are studying the subcontinent and India. The centrality of India in the Indian Ocean, again covered right from the keynote speaker, Admiral McCarthy. Throughout it has come out how India is central to the Indian Ocean. 1,000 kilometers of India juts into the Indian Ocean like a dagger, if you may call it, or any other way, and it just tends to dominate this area. 36 nations in the IOR, over 2.9 billion people, which is 35% of the world population. The number of ships that are transiting, you can see on the left-hand side of the screen. And look at the energy resources, 66% of the world's oil, 50% of container shipments, 33% of bulk cargo passes through these waters. So obviously, if there is no doubt that the oceans are a powerhouse of economic growth, and especially Indian Ocean for us. This is about India's export and import, 95% by volume and 68% by values through the sea. You imagine the 95% by volume is a phenomenal amount, and 2/3 plus is by value. We have the 3rd largest seafarer. That means roughly every 10th seafarer, practicing seafarer, is an Indian. The other 2 are China and Philippines. We covered in the morning a bit how 16th century onwards India's prowess in maritime affairs, shipbuilding, trade, etc., all kind of went down. And if you look at this slide on the left-hand side, where you see on the x-axis the years 1000 BC, you see India is an orange, and how big the orange blob is. 40% of the world trade was India, and India and China dominated it. And you see how narrow it has become. So that's the maritime mindset. Many reasons for it. Many reasons for it. We'll not get into that right now. But the point is, maritime consciousness and the growth of the nation are inextricably linked. This is about the maritime strategy. Again, Admiral Shantanu Jha and previous speakers covered. We also had, I think, Dr. Prateep only, who said that, when you look at the questions in the parliament, that maritime mindset is to come in, and he's right. I used to answer parliamentary questions, and not many were there. So from that, I leave that as it is, the importance of sea power, centrality of India, etc. This is the part for the blue economy. In a blue economy, the keywords are being sustainable in the use of resources. ये नहीं कि आपने आज शुरू कर दिया that you have a golden goose who gives the eggs, so kill the goose only. You have to sustain it over a period of time, and these are the major points. The Maritime Amrit Kal 2047, I start from the left: shipbuilding and repair, Sagarmala, Harit Sagar, which is all green ports, and biodiversity beyond the national jurisdiction, which is in the high seas, beyond the exclusive economic zone, which is the world's common area. So you cannot go there and fish in an unsustainable manner. So all these issues hopefully will be covered today. These are all the slides on it. I can go into detail, but I think we are lack of time. But do remember a few, very few important points from the Amrit Kal vision is, look at the second bullet point, 300 actionable points for 11 key themes. And just go through the executive summary. It is extremely important to know how the government of India has laid out a blueprint, and in good detail, not just, ye baatein nahi hai, there's a lot of detail in it and how to execute it. Shipbuilding and ship repair. In this, I will only point out that if you look at, I think it's 95% of shipbuilding, 100 tons and above, please correct me if I'm wrong, the panelists are more knowledgeable than me, 100 tons and above, 95% of ships are built between China, Japan and South Korea. So how will we increase our share? That is some of the things that we have to look at, and there's a lot of budget being given and fiscal priority being given to this aspect. Sagarmala is all about transforming the country's maritime infrastructure through port modernization, and 6 mega ports are going to come up, as the slide shows, for up to 300 to 500 million tons. Countries, it is estimated that 10% of China's GDP, again correct me if I'm wrong, this is all reasonable internet information, 10% of China's GDP comes from the maritime sector, as also Japan and Singapore. Singapore probably even higher, or Japan same. So how do we bring it up in our case? Focused on increased cargo handling and reduction in logistics cost. This is about green ports. How do we decarbonize it? In fact, Dr. Udon was discussing with me about climate change and how we are going to make our ports more resilient to climate change. Marpol is about pollution. Ship se pollute nahi karna hai apne seas ko. That is important. Warships are exempt, but we are all Marpol compliant now. Seabed exploration and mining, the amount of wealth in the seabed in terms of polymetallic nodules, polymetallic sulfides, geothermal vents is phenomenal. The problem is, from what I have read, is that it is such a fragile ecosystem. Nobody has touched that for ever since the earth existed. Now here you are with big drills trying to take it out. What kind of damage you will do to the seabed is an area of major concern. So one is exploitation and exploration. The other is the concern for the fragile ecosystem. How do you balance the two? Big time question that is being debated right now. So in the conclusion, I will just say that there is absolutely no doubt that oceans are the powerhouse for economic growth. The sooner we capitalize on this dictum and go on it, the better it is for us. In this slide, basically, I would only try to focus on the last slide, last bullet point, which is the challenges. Any exploitation, in my opinion, tends to have an adverse impact on the environment. And how do you balance that development with protecting the environment is not easy at all. Very, very difficult. The infrastructure that is required for such a growth to happen is extremely important, and we know infrastructure is something that we're really trying to make progress on, and much more needs to be done. Oversight, you can make big plans, but unless you have somebody with a danda making sure that it's being done properly, taking review meetings and meeting the targets, much of it keeps falling behind. And competing fiscal priorities for a country that is still at very low GDP per capita, and the amount of effort we need to put on this in this regard. So with that I end.